Live here on YouTube. We are going live now on Facebook. Get all of our supplies and liquids ready. See, which one of these two do you like better? Let's see. I think I like the dark ones better.
Here's another hour on the FM Money Talk Radio Network, WWNN.
This following message is brought to you by the Florida Division of Emergency Management, the Florida Association of Broadcasters, and this radio station.
This is Craig Fugate, the former director of Florida Emergency Management. At this time of COVID, you need to update your hurricane preparedness plan. That means knowing what evacuation zone you live in, and in order to leave, you need to go. Take your pets and stay with family or friends.
So anyway, we here having our Tuesdays tools, tips, and techniques. We started out the week talking about the goals and the difference between chasing a concept and a smart goal. And let's see, what else? It was also the let's see here.
It's the talk show for grown-ups, A Touch of Gray, Saturdays at 1 on the FM Money Talk Radio Network, WWNN.
The opinions expressed on the following sponsored program are strictly those of its hosts, guests, and hosts, and are not necessarily those of this station. It's not benefit from sponsors.
1/3.
Welcome to the Real Estate Show, brought to you by Capital One Group, LLC. Eric Willner, president of Capital One Group, LLC, is a highly trained financial professional. He helps clients.
Do we have a guest, by the way? Okay. Boca Raton is in the house. JT, American Quality Corporation. And hello, South Florida. Welcome to another live edition of the Real Estate Show. South Florida's #1 program about real estate and America's longest running daily radio show about real estate. My name is Eric Willner, and I am your host. We are live Monday through Friday. That's 5 days a week, each evening from 8 p.m. until 8:30. That's Eastern on the Eastern Standard Time. We're heard live not only on our local AM station, where everything began 21 years ago. We're live also on 3 additional FM stations. So whether you're on the Money Talk network, you'll catch us on all 4 of those stations. If you're on the iHeartRadio app, you can just check out WWNN 1470 Money Talk Radio, and you'll catch us and take us with you wherever you go. And when all else seems too difficult to remember, just go to automaticlandlord.com. That's automaticlandlord.com. Go to the top of the page, click on the Real Estate Show. You have the choice of listening to us live when? Monday through Friday from 8 p.m. until 8:30 p.m. And if you happen to miss any of those live shows, come back, same place, top of the page, Real Estate Show, and then click on our blog. And each day, not only do we have a summary of the radio show, we have a link for you to be able to listen to it right there on the website. Again, that's at automaticlandlord.com, or you can download it in podcast form. And so we're getting all the things ready when we'll release it officially as its own separate podcast coming up in a few months. But we're excited to say that it's already available, it's online, it's in action, and it works. So speaking about it works, Tuesdays, as we always go, we talk about the tools, tips, and techniques, things that are actually working and the things that are actually important for you to use if you're a real estate investor. And I want to talk today in particular about the mortgage moratorium and more importantly right now, the eviction moratorium. You see, those on a federal level have now expired. Now, state by state, they have taken on and extended those, depending, you got to check with your state, depending where you're listening. But state by state, most or many states anyway, have extended it. And I suspect that we're going to keep kicking this can down the street as long as we're in an election year. Now, that goes for the mortgage foreclosures. I don't think either party wants to get credit for that issue going forward, i.e. a lot of evictions or a lot of foreclosures. But come the election results, I think regardless of who ends up winning this year's elections, they're going to have to make some hard decisions, and they're going to have to swallow a bitter pill. Now, what's interesting, and a number that I keep seeing everywhere, and that must be somehow where they come up with the number, is that there as many as 40 million Americans could lose their homes during the pandemic, 4 times the number seen during the Great Recession. That is an interesting number. I'm not exactly sure how or where they came up with it. They're using that number, and I've seen that number in a couple of different places. I've seen it as the number of renters, and I've seen it as the number of homes that could be lost during the pandemic. That number right now just came from CNBC. And what I wanted to do is first I want to remind that I'm trying to remember back, but it was very much right in the very beginning. So it's probably one of my March shows where I talked about the 4 great delusions that were being talked about out there. Number one is that there's a free ride. A lot of people were celebrating, believe it or not, that there was a moratorium on payments, and that's, I think, the birth of this concept of cancellation, as if magically this number is going to go away. Remember, if there's a mortgage, that means that there is someone who is supposed to make a payment on a note. The note is payment to a bank. The bank borrowed that money to be able to lend it out, whether it be from the federal government, whether it be from other banks, or whether it be from other individuals or other investment companies. And so they're expecting a return of their money, let alone the return on their money. So you can see that there's 3 or 4 layers down the road that lose out if all of a sudden, poof, everybody doesn't pay. So that's why it was very apparent, and especially for those of you who went through some of this back during the Great Recession, mortgage forbearance, for those of you who still may not completely understand it, is nothing more than a delay in payment. It's like giving you a loan on your loan. The payments that you don't make, we're going to lend that money as if you made it, or many cases not as if you made it. We're going to lend it to you plus interest, pay us later, kind of like a layaway program, and then you can pay us back. Now, the original moratorium was for just 3 months. And the expectation was that at the end of the 3 months, then we would somehow magically be lifted out of this pandemic. Everybody would be back at work, and everybody could just magically write a check. As you can see, all of those assumptions were not true. And here we are now. We had March, April, May, June, July, August, 7 months already into the pandemic with, I'm not going to say no end in sight, but certainly no cure in sight. Now, we are happy to see that a lot of the numbers are going down. We are happy to see that there's better testing. I'm happy to see there's a lot of, improvements, and, thank God to a modern society, and, hopefully some worldwide cooperation. Definitely some major corporations see the dollar reward in coming up with that solution. So, there's never been more effort focused and concentrated on coming to a great solution. Nevertheless, and I mentioned this back in March because I did a bunch of research on the previous pandemics. About every 100 years, we seem to have another pandemic. And it's almost like clockwork. You know, in the beginning of every century, there is this pandemic. Now, pandemics have lasted. The shortest one was 2 years, and the longest one was 10 years. So I was saying it from the beginning, get ready for a 2-year long ride. And I was hearing people saying, like, you know, thinking that this was going to blow over in 60 days, like it was a minor recession. So obviously not the case, and obviously something of you know, worldwide proportions. But I'll tell you, if you go about your business and as much as you can, now of course there is what they're calling the new normal. Today I was actually in a discussion talking about Florida, which is in phase 2, right? And phase 3 would be which will be the new normal. In other words, it's not going to be completely going back to the way it was, but there's going to be still some social distancing, some precautions that have to be taken. There's going to be a brand new minimum level of cleanliness and disinfecting that's going to be required in hotels, restaurants, airplanes, and other public facilities. You know, it's interesting. I rented a truck from Home Depot to go move some materials. And Home Depot comes out and special sprays and cleans the truck before I'm allowed to get in. I rented a car last week before I went to Tennessee, and they come out and they do a special cleaning of the car, and you see all the paperwork that says that it's been done. That's going to be the new normal. So back in March, I talked about the 4 delusions that I was expecting. Number one, that this was a free ride. That was a delusion. This is not a free ride. All this is, and to the extent that we can repay these things. Now, when I come back, and we're going to take a break in a second. When I come back, I'm going to explain why there's a major gap in the solutions right now. I'm going to talk a little bit about what today the Treasury Secretary Mnuchin was talking about, that since the two sides can't come together, and P.S. the only reason they're not coming together with a new bill is political, 100%. And there are a number of things that they do agree on. You know, stimulus for the people, and certain small business loans. Those things they agree on. Why don't they just pass those and let it go forward? Well, they won't, because they're afraid that they won't get their special interest things done if they let go of the critical things. And so purely political. Shame on the politicians for that one. And that is the reason why we don't have it. I'm going to talk a little bit about what they agree on, what they don't agree on, and how this is going to affect the evictions. And that's really why I'm getting into this. The second delusion that they had, that I talked about back in March, okay, so here we are. Let me count this for you one more time. March, April, May, June, July, August completed, and now we're into September, seven months. Everyone thought that real soon you're going to get a call and they're just going to call us back up when they reopen. Here's Florida. We're still in phase 2, not even in phase 3 yet. Restaurants are still capped at 50% capacity. I don't know how many restaurants can even make it at 50% capacity in good times, let alone with additional costs and sanitizing and new barriers that they have to put up and so forth. So it's a big challenge. The delusion number 1. Number 2 was that my boss will call me Monday and my job is waiting for me. I said, watch out, because there's a lot of jobs that just ain't coming back. Once we have this new normal, there's going to be a new downsized version of the new normal, and there's going to be a lot of things that have changed. And I'm going to talk about that as far as long distance working, long distance studying, long distance eating, et cetera, et cetera. Number 3 was that there's no inflation. Well, tell me, with now already $1.3 trillion package under our belts, and they want another one. If that doesn't cause inflation, and then the fourth one, that there won't raise the taxes. Well, it hasn't yet, because remember, we're in an election year. So all of those things are coming. So remember my four. Now remember, I'm not trying to predict anything, but I am trying to prepare for everything. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. Here are a few words from our sponsors. You're listening to The Real Estate Show on our Tuesdays, Tools, Tips, and Techniques edition. My name is Eric Willner. Don't touch that dial, because I will be right back. So hi, Cindy. Michael, we got a strong California presence on the show today. We got John and Boca Raton here, so that's good. And let's see here. And then we got Pennsylvania. We got South Florida, Broward County, Palm Beach County. And I'm trying to see if we got a Dade County in there, but anyway, it's an interesting day in Congress now, right? They're still going back and forth, pointing the fingers, but it looks like it will not be till sometime mid to late September before it could even be possible to have another stimulus check out there. Now, quite honestly, hey, Michael, I have not yet received my first stimulus check, but self-employed, what do you got? So the PPP, the stimulus, very interesting, and I'm going to talk a lot more about this in the second half of the program about what's going on. Do you know that the CARES Act, that was the first one, the $2 trillion CARES Act, I called it a $3 trillion. I should have mentioned that was $2 trillion, but what's $1 trillion amongst friends? That was signed into law March 27th. So here we go. April, May, June, July, August. 5 months later, they thought that there was going to be another stimulus package right on the heels of that one. 5 months later, it'll be 6 months before they're able to come together on a stimulus package. P.S. I'd like to know your opinion on the major holdup. I'm going to come back to that when we're live. We're coming back now. And welcome back. For those of you just joining us, you are listening to The Real Estate Show. South Florida's #1 program about real estate, America's longest running daily radio show about real estate. And as we do normally on our Tuesdays, Tools, Tips, and Techniques, we kind of dive down into some of the things that what you ought to be watching out for, some of the things that you could be doing. I would love to be reporting because I watch the headlines very closely. And I've made calls as many as I can make into the leaders in the mortgage industry, into the leaders in the real estate business, even some friends, in connected to Washington in direct and indirect ways. And man, nobody has a clue of what's going on here and what's coming up. And I do feel bad, especially for a lot of the people who were displaced. And particularly relevant here to the real estate show, we've got really two camps that are really on the edge. And as this protracts, I'm seeing this become more of a problem where some of the people who are able to sort of, stretch it out and hope that they weren't going to have to fall behind, weren't going to have to take the forbearance, are now, we're about even as the people coming off the forbearance and people going on to the forbearance. So it's kind of staying at a level, something in the neighborhood. I forget whether it was 4.9 million or something of that nature. It was a decent, a pretty decent amount of people in there, not a small amount. Now, I think that there's a number of things in there. There were the people who were already in some form of trouble in a strong market. Remember March when the pandemic hit, we were in a rip-roaring, very strong economy. But even in good times, bad things happen: divorces, bankruptcies, and deaths, disabilities, all of those things that cause people to fall behind and not be able to make their payments, even in the best of markets. The good news about that is that because in good markets there's a very high demand, and there remains today a very high demand, that those people, if they fairly price their homes, if they're not upside down, it's fairly easy for them to get out of that situation. Of course, they're going to be out of a house. The difficulty comes when the supply and demand balance goes the other way, and that's what you got to watch out for. So far, we are artificially propping up the supply and demand in this way. The demand, there is still a very strong demand because there was a coming back of sorts from people who had lost their homes in the Great Recession, were now becoming good credit, clean slate, back in business, back employed, making good money, saving up, cleaning up their credit in other areas. And so that was a very strong thing, which seems to have a bit of momentum because 5 months, 6 months later, we're still in that situation. Now, we could have had a whole bunch more inventory on the market, but because of the moratorium on the foreclosures, those properties are all not yet on the market. And so a lot of people are staying in their homes, hanging on for dear life. Some people are abusing that situation there and are coasting for the coasting of their life. And that is one of the things keeping this market, I would say, artificially strong. Now, what I also didn't mention is that there is a huge demographic force coming of age, coming into the marketplace in terms of the millennials that are now in their higher earning years, they're in their family bearing years, and therefore now they have a big appetite for homes in bigger areas. Add to what I'll call the pandemic effect, where now you've got people in big populated cities now that want to move out into the suburbs. So there is a rotation going on as well. Bottom line, there's a huge demand for places, wide open areas like Florida, wide open areas like Texas, wide open areas like, you're seeing them in all the suburbs literally across the country. And so until and when, it's not a matter of if, until and when the moratorium lifts up, you're going to see that demand outpacing supply. The question is what's going to happen when suddenly there's going to be a release of supply? Now, I will sort of let you behind the curtains on this thing, because I am talking to a lot of people in the financial world. They don't know when, but they are sure that when the moratorium is lifted, they're already gearing up the back office, if you will, to handle all of the foreclosures and short sales and whatnot that is going to come. Now, the question is that, initially there'll be a flood that'll upset the marketplace, that'll upset the balance. But because there's still, I think, more demand than there is supply, that oversupply will be quickly absorbed, and then we'll get back into a normal, but perhaps even still strong real estate market. If I was to coach and consult, I would walk carefully, which that's kind of like my next sort of tip, is to, you got to do your own numbers. And we're going to talk more about how you do those numbers. Now, Michael, one of our Facebook audience, put in a very good comment, and he's saying here that the Oracle of Omaha, we're talking about Buffett, pulled his money out of the banks. I'm sure the move is a foretelling of what's to come. And let me go here, see more on the comment there, along the lines of what you're telling your audience. And that is exactly right. He probably doesn't want to put his money anywhere where there is any kind of issue of freezing or of illiquidity. Now, of course, pulling its money out of those banks is only going to aggravate the liquidity problem. But let's come back to here. If you've been following a lot of my statistics when I do some of the midweek reports, we talk about how there's a balance. There's about a 60% owner occupied versus 40% non-owner occupied ratio of properties. And that's and that'll vary from different places. I'm talking here for sure in the Tri-County area here of Florida. And I do the Tri-County area because I do want to get a cross section. That means that 40% of all properties are rental properties. If they're non-owner occupied, that means that they're rental properties. Now, here's the problem. And I've said this a couple of times before. I still have not heard Washington say a single comment about this. And if you see a comment, send me articles or anything that you see out there. But what Washington is not talking about is that the forbearance or this delay of payment that the owners, the non-owner occupied or the investors that are, you know, even if they're being not forgiven, but if they're being allowed to defer and delay, they're going to have to pay later. But here's something that I've seen in the property management business is that when a tenant goes beyond 3 months, now remember, that's why I kept counting. We're in what month right now? March didn't pay, April didn't pay, May, June, July, August, and now September, 7 months. When a tenant goes past 3 months, he begins to wonder, is it worth catching up 7 months of rent, or should I just put first, last, and security on something new and say bye-bye to the old landlord? Not my problem. And so the landlord now owes the money to the banks for all 7 months, and he's lost. He has lost the rental income coming in, so he's going to have to pay it out of future earnings or out of his own pocket. And contrary to most belief, the average landlord owns 1 to 2 properties at most. That the landlord that people always paint a picture of, the fat cat, cigar smoking, you know, fat old white guy that owns hundreds of properties, is a myth. That's true on the monopoly game, and I'm surprised they haven't protested the monopoly game yet as being, politically incorrect. But what you're going to see is that the investors are much more at risk coming up than the tenants are. And I only hope that any rent assistance gets paid directly to the landlord in cooperation with the two. That way we keep all of the fraud out of the way. Anyway, that's my message here for today. Remember, Wednesday we're going to get our midweek report. I'm going to come out with a whole bunch of statistics and lots of information for you. That's it. We're out of time for today's edition of the Real Estate Show. Hope you enjoyed it. Remember to tell a friend. Make sure that you press the like button here on our live broadcast, our video broadcast on Facebook and on YouTube. Otherwise, everyone out there, make sure that you drive safe, wash those hands, and make it a great day. God bless America. Bye-bye. We got out on good time. All right, man. Thank you very much. Let me wind down here. Adios, and thank you for all of my friends here on our YouTube stream. And then